I've heard about you and I've been reading about your work and how far ahead of everyone you've been in this world of cyber craziness and now AI um, coming quickly into our lives. So tell me a little bit about your initial interest in the world you found yourself in the middle of.
Yeah, this is, first of all, thank you, Norma, so much for having me. I so admire your work and your creativity. And I think many of the things that attracted me to this area was curiosity, impact. I could see that technology was going to impact all of our lives. But by way of background briefly, I was a graduate at Brown University in 1988, and I was interested in international relations. And I graduated with two non-technical degrees in international relations and French civilization. And I went to Georgetown Law directly afterwards, and I was attracted to the global perspective, international matters. And so I graduated in 1991. But I'll never forget, my favorite course was my second year of law school in 1990, taught by Professor Anita Allen, who's now a vice provost at UPenn Law. But it was called Privacy in American Law. And this was pre-internet, pre-commercialization of the internet. But I was just captivated by that topic. It was my favorite course. I argued for the private lives of politicians, which of course doesn't exist, but that was what my paper was about. So I lost that argument. And then I went on and worked for a big law firm and started my career there. And then in 1998, I went to a small boutique firm, and one of our former associates left the firm and went to a startup that no one had heard of at that time called Yahoo. And through that period, really got exposed to data privacy through ad tech issues and digital advertising. And it wasn't far after that cyber, we called it data security back then, and defense in depth came into play. And then I just, founded and built the privacy and data management and then global data innovation teams at multiple global law firms. So the intersection of international and data and curiosity just brought me to this point.
It's really fascinating how we all start out thinking we're taking a path and then the universe brings us to where we should be. And the beauty of being in a place that hasn't been discovered yet is you can invent your future. You can invent and do things that have never been done before. And you certainly decided to take a place in this and have been not only advising people on steps they can take, but also taking a lead in the AI aspect of it, which I think is really the most important now because things are moving so quickly. One of the things that, I'd like to start by saying my audience, mostly women, there's a creative group of people in my audience, and this is a high sensitive discussion when we talk about AI. And I like to talk about it so that people can really understand as much as possible so they can learn how to use it and be innovative with it. So I think the big question always is, what are the safeguards? Who's responsible for the safeguards? Is it the technology companies? Is it individual companies, or is it the government? How would you kind of make that picture come alive for us?
So that's a really great question, Norma. And I would say it's a combination of all of the stakeholders that you mentioned. And then I want to give a pointer about how to proceed in our current context. So the tech companies, many of them are building in trustworthy AI frameworks. And I was just speaking earlier this week to a group of 200 board members with the head of cyber at Microsoft, and the ways that they are baking in trustworthy AI and cyber and privacy protections into their AI is really exciting. Similarly, Salesforce, IBM, etc. I want to just have a caution there, though, that that's not enough. For the creative community, if you have a brand or a company and you're using these tools, ultimately the brand will be you. And the reason I say this is that we've had situations like the CEO of Sports Illustrated having to step down because the audience just wasn't ready for AI authorship and AI profiles. The customer base kind of freaked out, and it caused a slide in viewership and loss of money. So those sorts of things, I always caution people that see something, say something, and it's really important that you're involved.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Brad Smith about fashion and IP protections, and he was shocked. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm sure you do. You're in this area, but designers have zero protection. We have no IP protection. In my entire 57-year career, I've never been able to protect any of my designs.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. And so in the conversation, I was saying, and this is really directed to you as well, if there could be a form of protection, and I have let's say in my case, I have my entire archive in one place, right? And it's not part of any outside interaction. If that protection could then be over my brand, it would be the first time that a designer would have IP protection in forever. Wow. And so it's an interesting time because we're looking at all of the downside, but in the upside, this could also be a very exciting kind of new opportunity for creative people. I'm trying to show the positive here, Dominique. So this is one of my hopeful dreams, that more creative people would be less afraid of that. What are some of the guardrails that exist now that you think show promise or are definitely going to be a part of our future?
Yeah, well, I talk about this in an op-ed piece that just ran in the San Francisco Chronicle recently. And just in what you're talking about, one key piece of this puzzle for trustworthy AI, and there are 5 steps to it, but one of them has to do with, I call it the R in trust, right data, ensuring that you have business rights to train with data, that you have the IP rights and the privacy rights. And so in that regard, to what you were saying, I think many companies will begin to start affording rights to artists and creatives that may not have existed before, just like you mentioned, because they really want to make sure they get the business part right. We're going to talk about some of this coming up next month at my Digital Trust Summit at the National Press Club. But the idea of the tech companies and other companies beginning to enter into agreements and looking at percentages of which part came from the creative and which part was created by the AI, and figuring out appropriate licensing deals. And that's where this is going next.
Yeah. Do you think there would ever be a chance that instead of human beings monitoring, that AI could be trained to do all of the monitoring from a neutral, unbiased, unemotional, unopinionated point of view, where we might possibly see this unbiased opinion finally coming into this picture?
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's already starting. I'm excited for these trends. There's a company called Vermilio, run
Right.
by Dan Neely, and he's I just got a note from him that they just got A round funding, 8-figure A round funding to pursue this. Using AI models to be able to identify sort of almost the DNA of the AI output, and to go back to the rights holders and see this is this percentage. And frankly, he's sort of like Switzerland. He's working on both sides. So sometimes he's representing companies so that they can make sure that they're thinking of a right percentage in terms of what to grant in terms of a license to the artist. So this is, I think, that's why I think this is going to be the future. And I'm excited to hear Dan speak at my summit this month.
Yeah, I love that, because in my fantasy mind about this, I and the licensing idea and having AI monitoring it, having ideas, designs out there, but there's a price to pay if you want it, or maybe a penalty if you take it, right? If you want it, you can pay. If it's a negotiation that is a preset or can be, and it's also then starting new business. It's a new way to do business with licensing. And for artists, I think this could be a huge opportunity that most artists don't have. So what he's working on, I think, is exactly what we need. And then how would AI monitor it? I mean, what would be the functioning part of how it's kind of looked after this?
Yeah, so and I think I want to connect you with Dan, because I think he can go into a lot more detail about how his particular model is working. But the trend that I'm seeing is that companies that are using AI output, they are trying to get ahead of claims of IP violations. And so I know that many of the tech companies have said that they will step in, and if it's the underlying AI model that is deemed to have violated copyrights or trademarks, that they will step in and protect the company that licensed the model.
Right.
It's still not enough for the company's brand. So what I'm seeing, Fortune 500 companies, if they're using content for marketing or otherwise, they want to make sure that an IP that the AI output has been scrubbed for IP rights. From a rights holder standpoint, from a creative standpoint, the way this would work is that you would get with a company like this, provide your designs and other things, and the model gets trained on those, and then looks for almost like DNA, like the traces of your content anywhere in output, and then just very nicely reaches out, kind of like how we did with back in the day and Web 1.0 during Napster, where you actually have Dan's firm reach out and say, well, this percentage, 10% of this actually is part of Norma's designs. And so
I love that.
A licensing model.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a relief to a lot of companies that are just using AI for, say you're a big consumer packaged goods company, or you're a big bank. you're just using the AI for marketing purposes in that context. And yes, if there's a licensing fee to be paid, happy to do that in order to leverage the brand versus being involved in litigation or something.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think companies will be happy to use this properly. I know everybody, the train left the station. So this is our reality. Now, what's the best way to use it and that everybody can profit from it? How do you use AI personally? What's your go-to?
So we have enterprise licenses at Global Data Innovation, where at my company, we have an enterprise license to OpenAI, Microsoft Copilot, and those are the two that I use. But certainly there are many others, Gemini, et cetera. But I pretty much stick to those two. There are over, I think, 800 billion different chatbots. I would caution people to kind of stick with I stick with the name brands personally because they put a lot of thought into things like protecting data, protecting the customers, not training with the customers' prompts. That's really important because you don't want your competitors being able to type in things like what happened with Samsung, and all of a sudden their proprietary projects were coming out as output to their competitors because their employees had used a generally available, commercially available chatbot. So, but yeah, I like to use it. It's a great way to start with research. It's not the beginning, and everything needs to be, on my end verified. But I find it a great way to just sort of prompt ideas. And I have a data scientist that works with me, Isabel, and she uses it too to track over 1,100 use cases for AI. So we have a stockpile of AI, success stories.
Great. So great.
Yeah.
What about the AI bigger than an assistant, the agent or that higher level that's coming, right? I mean, for you, and I mean, I fantasize that I'll have an AI lawyer of my own.
That's already out there.
I know, except
without the
I'm still fantasizing because I don't think I need a full-time AI lawyer for myself. But the idea of it is what? I mean, and all the other categories, it's just so exciting. And then, it's the question, would you rather have a doctor or an AI possible robot do a very detailed, intricate procedure for you? And I don't know about you, but I go back and forth on that one. Where is your head on that?
Yeah, for certain things, already robotics and surgery are already happening with AI. I do like the idea for sensitive surgeries for the physician to also be in the room. But a lot of it, it's almost like when we think of, it's almost like flying a plane, right? That has predominantly been powered by algorithms and AI for years.
Yeah.
There's still a pilot in the cockpit. And that's to be able to override things if necessary and using that judgment. So the pilot's job has changed, but they're still necessary. So I feel like the physicians, their role will be guiding and on the other hand too, there's been AI that's done some amazing things. There's a story I was reading about a woman named Shyla, and her husband had an AI company. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with Shyla, and he fed her x-rays into his AI, and they identified early detection.
Right. Yeah.
She's doing great. Yeah.
That's so, it's incredible. I think, what I've learned using AI is that AI is a great tool for an artist, but AI, the threat of AI doing my job for me isn't as frightening when you realize that AI doesn't have emotions, doesn't have passion, doesn't break up with their boyfriends or husbands, or, has drama. And so in some cases, that's not a great thing. But in other cases, like this, where you don't want the doctor or somebody to come in with, we don't want to know that you did not sleep last night. We want this, to happen. And I do think, with all of this, looking at it in this human way, where how do we deal with it? Like you gave that great example of finding a solution, using the human spirit and technology. But the fact that AI just doesn't have emotion and passion is a very important factor for artists and people who think about this in that way. When hallucinations come into the picture, where are your thoughts about hallucinations now? What kind of progress is, first of all, what's the downside of hallucinations? And then what progress is being made in dealing with them?
So I'll give you, in terms of the downside, a couple of examples. The CEO of a major logistics company, similar to a Federal Express or UPS in the EU, wakes up to the name of her company trending on X, formerly Twitter. And why was that? Because a customer had posted a video, had typed in a request to find out where his package was, and this chatbot that they had enabled and trained on their own data, and had answered questions like this for months, thousands of questions like this 24/7 for months without an issue, suddenly came back and had learned through the internet to start cursing at the customer, calling the company the worst logistics company in the world, and blaming the company for getting rid of, firing its real customer service representatives and leaving the customer with this quote unquote useless chatbot. And I'm paraphrasing. So this went on, a while. The customer videotaped it, or, on his phone, just taped it and recorded it and sent it to, and this is why I believe in our people, Norma, because they are pulling for companies with this tech. The first thing the customer did was send it to the company at the email address that the company had. And it just wasn't a monitored email. So 48 hours went by and nothing was done. So he jumped on to X, and then, 2.2 million views, a BBC article, a Time Inc. article. And, that's a small thing. Embarrassing, but stock right down, et cetera. But just think about, some of one of our tech companies had an AI drift situation that led to 80 billion in market cap being wiped off the books in one day.
Yeah.
So that's the risk of it. Now, where do we stand with it? I spend a lot of time with large language model experts, generative AI scientists that come to my summit, and we're having one soon. And they have told me, and they're academics on the ground, this is all they do 24/7. They have testified before Congress, testified in the EU, that they don't know why models drift, and that's where hallucination comes from. But they don't know why they drift yet, and so therefore they can't stop it preventively.
Wow.
Okay, so that's why the UN trust that I talk about in the article, the uninterrupted testing, monitoring, and auditing by machines is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Company standards, because generative AI is generating off the whole wide internet. Mm. And that can delight you when you're trying to find like early detection of lung cancer, like Shyla and Simon, but it can be unsettling if it departs from your brand. So the clear no-nos, like things that for an AI use case, you don't want to come out. Like I definitely don't want to use X's designs or whatever, whatever that is, whatever you do in real life, then that needs to be coded in terms of ones and zeros that the AI understands, because you're right, it's not sentient, it's an actual computer, algorithmic model. If you tell it what's right and wrong in terms of ones and zeros, the computer can understand. It can alert you that all of a sudden output is coming in that is outside of the parameters quite acceptable. And that's the responsibility that I say that anybody who has a brand, if they care about it and they don't want to drift along with where the AI might go, it's very important to have your standards in there that are clear no-nos.
Yeah, I know it's a very serious issue, but recently, so for a minute, I'll tell you what I'm doing with AI. I have a 57-year archive, and I was in Abu Dhabi, and I met with some scientists who had this idea, and they talked about downloading my brain for a project, an AI designed and run website and fashion. And I thought, well, I'm complimented, but I think the idea sounds great. There's some good things that I think I'll do this myself. So I fortunately found someone to do a custom program for me. And so I have this great program. When I decide that this is not what I'll be doing anymore, 10, 20 years from now, this company can go on like Karl Lagerfeld took over Chanel and used her archive. AI can use my archive with prompting from my team, and this can continue. So this great thing I have. So I'm playing with it and, having a good time. And all of a sudden I'm playing and I'm pushing it, putting things together that I shouldn't, everything I was told not to do. And these amazing hallucinations start and they look fantastic. It's like, I'll send you pictures of it. It's like art and technology and fashion all together. And so I'm celebrating hallucinations as an art form, but I realize that I think I've captured history, and we probably in the near future will not see hallucinations anymore, and rightfully so. I think they should be eliminated, but I'm having my moment of glory right now with it.
Well, and I think, hallucinations are not bad on their own. It's only if it goes outside of what would delight you.
Yes.
And so there's probably some things just off the top of your head that you would just know wouldn't, and that's the kind of thing that if you were using it commercially or your team was, that you would just want to make sure it doesn't come out under your brand. But that's not great.
Yeah. So how do we train people to know what to do, how to do this, how to do it properly? I know you talk about proper training and making sure that people are educated properly that are doing this. Tell us a little bit about a little background on it and your thoughts about this.
Yeah, so my thoughts on this really come from my 30 plus years advising big companies, big global companies, Fortune 500, et cetera, as outside counsel as an attorney. And when I think back to 2001, when we were at an inflection point then with Web 1.0, et cetera, many of us on the ground knew exactly what steps needed to be taken so that companies were not victims, or they would be victims of cyber attacks, but they wouldn't be victimized by them. In other words, it's not going to shake revenue or operations or strategy if a criminal gets in your system. We knew the answers to those things in 2001. And I got to tell you, Norma, I'm still haunted by the fact that we didn't speak up to our CEO, our board community, our leaders, and explain how straightforward, really 6 things that could have avoided a lot of harm, which has cost, like, for example, cybercrime cost our global economy. This year is going to cost $10.5 trillion.
It's just mind-boggling.
And that money is money we could use, for other things rather than the ransomware and the criminals, et cetera. AI is supposed to bring 7.5 trillion to our economy this year. So you can see we're already underwater. Cybercrime is going to cost more than, eclipse the gains that we're going to get in AI. So the good news about this is we can turn that whole trend around because we're at another inflection point with AI. And if we turn AI around, we're going to improve cyber too and keep that money in our global economy. The control here involves a mnemonic I created, which is called trust. So T for triaging, knowing when you are in high risk or low risk AI and treating it differently. Mm-hmm. When you're in high, making sure that there's the R in trust, that you have right data, business rights, IP rights, privacy rights to train your model. And then we talked about this earlier, to deal with drift, uninterrupted testing, monitoring, and auditing of output, kind of like a quality control situation. Yeah. So you can be alerted if, something that you definitely do not want. And when I talk to clients and companies and CEOs, I say, don't think of imagine new standards, the ones that got you to the place where you are now. Right. The qualities that you insist upon with humans, just make sure those are coded in your AI use cases so they don't abrogate those. Mm-hmm. And then on the S, the supervision by humans. So a model you can have an AI model, basically observe and monitor another model for output. But at some point in time, if your standards are being, say, cursing at the customers or the wrong designs come out or something, right. They know, we need a supervising human to be alerted and step to the last T, which is technical documentation. The IT team needs logging data, metadata to get in there and do their job and get the AI back on track. Mm. It doesn't slow anything down to do these trust steps. Yeah. So all about moving fast with trust.
I really, I think that's so helpful. It's really incredibly helpful. And it's almost like you should have a course or something. I'm serious because there's so much data coming so quickly. But if there's a safety course that people can have their teams take and look at and use, I think it's incredibly helpful to do. I had the thought when we started talking that after all, you are a lawyer. That's how you began, and you've taken that role, expanded it incredibly. But in this world that you're in the law, what is the biggest, most notable lawsuit in this cyber, either AI, let's say, as a sample of a marker in this? I think these lawsuits are informative, right, on how far you can go. What would be an example of that?
Well, a lot of the cases are in flight right now. There are multiple IP lawsuits against our tech companies, very few on the tech companies' customers, although some demands have been made, but not actual litigation against the customers. But a lot of IP, copyright, trademark abuse claims. We have the Europeans and the French ministry coming out and saying that the certain tech companies have violated IP rights by training on data that is rights held. So those things are we're going to continue to see that litigation go on, I think, for the next 10, 15 years. The U.S. is going to lag behind Europe as far as AI regulation. You're not going to see our federal government come out, I think, with any legislation this year, for example. So that's why it's so important for companies to include these safety measures, because you won't have the direct guidance from, say, a legislative imperative, but your brand can be at stake. When I think about, this is outside of the design context, but I think about a company like Rite Aid that ended up where its AI was in the store, was used to protect customers from smash and grabs and so forth. But it misidentified paying customers as criminals. So that's not great for anybody.
No.
and that comes from, if you lay the trust framework over that, just imagine if the security guards had been able to explain what they normally look at for suspicious people, and that had been put into code,
right,
the AI itself.
Yeah.
When deviations occurred, a supervising human could have learned and prevented that.
Yeah.
Those are the types of things.
Yeah, because it really does end up in the quality of the prompt or the quality of the information you put in. It really is that. It's so important.
Absolutely.
This is just I'm curious about your personal opinion about this. So, I believe I'm a public school graduate, New York City public school graduate. I've gone back into the public schools for like over 20 years, helping the kids. It's just not an even playing field, and I don't want to get into that whole thing, but it just is it's a big issue for me. And I see this time as a chance to level the playing field. I really feel excited about it, and that this can be this personalized education. What are your thoughts about it? And then as a follow-up to that, what about teaching kids AI and what approach that would be?
So I love to see, first of all, I think AI is going to be a major equalizer. And I remember hearing from the United Nations Ambassador Gill, who heads the technology division for the UN, talking about this at our Digital Trust Summit. And the Global South wants these tools so that they can be able to catch up a little bit. They, maybe missed the Industrial Revolution, Web 1.0, and this is a time to just jump in and actually be able to scale.
Yeah.
It's also true for disadvantaged communities, or just maybe not disadvantaged, but just regular people that may not have had the same opportunities to scale businesses and create the next unicorn. And that's within our reach, within our grasp. I love that the students are learning about this and that you're teaching them. That's so great. And that needs to continue. At the same time, it's really important for the students to be trained about, okay, this is what to put into the AI. This is what you might want to leave out. This is what you can rely on the AI for your creativity, for your growth, et cetera, for business. But for emotional support, that might be time to double check this with, you might get advice there, but also double check with a human, a therapist, and so forth, so that you don't have situations where people become disconnected, like we've had some situations with teenagers. So I think there's tremendous possibility there, and the kids are learning it no matter what. They are, many of them already are deep into these tools. So parents and educators need to understand that the kids are using them. Yeah,
and educators need a new education, because it definitely is it's set. It's in place. We can show a little interest and you learn so much. With a little bit more education, it just opens a world of ideas and opportunities. And a question about, so let's say somebody wants to open a business, very simplistic. We're talking about everybody now, right? Not these huge corporations that need your help and guidance, but now you're talking to a friend who says she wants to open a business and she has a lot of IP she wants protected and she needs to know what are the things that she should look after to protect herself in opening this business in respect to this topic we're on?
Well, the main thing is that I would say is that you want to make sure that you stay in control of your brand and that the quality that you're expecting, that it's there. And so I would just caution that AI is amazing, but it's not a set it and forget it tool. It's constantly, just imagine the whole wide internet. You're generating so much data globally per day. So it's like a roiling ocean of dynamic insights, some of them amazing, some of them may not meet your standards. So you've got to always kind of make sure that you've got controls in place. The trust framework I talked about will help and go a long way towards that. I would also just say, if there are certain things that you know you want to use and train your model with and they're not yours, my recommendation would be to reach out to the folks, because a lot of people are working in very company like this sounds like they might have a very specific idea of what they're working on. It's not as huge as,
Right.
Say, the big tech companies. So going to a few of the folks that you might want to collaborate with or that you might want to use their data, get into a licensing agreement. It doesn't have to be.
That's so great.
You could experiment together. It may not be a charge, but that way you don't have any blowback later that somebody says that they weren't consulted.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I mean, it's true. If you just get there and say, this is what I'd like to do, that it's fantastic advice. And then what exactly is responsible AI?
Responsible AI, I just have reframed into the trust framework. It's essentially what we discussed earlier.
Okay.
It means triaging, knowing, things that are high risk, things that are low risk, and things that are prohibited, just being aware of those things. So an example of high risk, things having to do with children, employment, medical situations, financial. You can almost feel in your gut, Norma, anything that might have a significant impact on the physical well-being of someone or their mental well-being. That's a good barometer there that you're in a high risk zone.
Yeah.
And so that's when you want to apply the other steps that I talked to you about in trust.
Yeah. I mean, that phrase is becoming more and more popular. And I just wanted you to sum it up because I think a lot of people will be hearing it. And then I think my question for you is, what do you think the biggest shift in the jobs market and the economy will be as a result of some of this fast movement of AI? And then sort of what will we see? And then where is it going to plateau? Or it may never, I don't know.
I think this is our next growth engine for our economy for the next 25 years. I mean, it's kind of like where we were back when smartphones came out or, Web 1.0. We're at that kind of inflection point. And it's now 25 years later, after cell phones and so forth, we're beginning to look at this next level. So we are at a serious inflection point. The trillions that are anticipated to come to our global economy. This year it's 7.5 trillion. Next year it's supposed to be over 10 trillion. This is, I think, underestimating the opportunities that exist. However, we will not reach that sort of promised state to our global economy if it gets mired in headlines that are negative. Why? Because if we have negative things that happen, cars running over people and AI didn't do. What happens is it erodes trust, and then people get frozen and don't use it the way that they should. So we need to really, embed these responsible and trustworthy AI steps that I talked to you about, so that we can protect the technology and the adoption, because we have to depend on this technology. It's going to impact all of our lives.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. This was so helpful. And you are just a star, and it's so exciting having this time with you. And I can't wait to share this with everyone that I know that has an interest in fashion or creative arts or IP, or listening to someone who's really carved a path for herself and really helped a burgeoning new world have some smart support. So thank you for everything you're doing, and I will continue to follow you and see what you're up to.
Thank you so much, Norma, for having me.
Oh, thank you. Take care.